The ACN podcast is made possible thanks to the generosity of our listeners and sponsors, including the Agile Alliance. As a nonprofit membership organization, the Agile Alliance is an excellent resource to help you along your Agile journey. To learn more about the Agile Alliance and our other sponsors, as well as how you can become a sponsor or supporter of our show, please visit acnpodcast.org for more information. And thank you for your support. Good morning and good evening, everyone. This is the Agile Coaching Network. My name is Ray Arell. This podcast is brought to you by the Agile Alliance. If you don't know who the Agile Alliance is, please go give them a look at agilealliance.org. It's a nonprofit organization that's made up of member support. And if you look at the initiatives and the different types of functions and the things that we do as an organization, those all come from your membership. Just to let you know, for the people who've been sort of mourning the losses of these events that we have normally do through the year where we get together, whether it be XP, Agile 2020, all of the things that have been postponed and disrupted by the current virus. Just to let you guys know that the XP 2020 is now back on again. It's going to be an online event that'll happen June 8th through the 12th. And all you have to do to attend this is you can, if you're already a member of the Agile Alliance, you can just sign up for it. Otherwise, you could also pay for individual attendance to it, but I'll tell you the economics of this is the Agile Alliance one-year membership is $99, but if you just want to go to the XP event, it's $200 if you want to sign without a membership. So you do the math. I think you can kind of figure out how that all works. This is your first time. You might find this a little bit of an interesting format. This is an open discussion group. Yes, we do have regulars who are on this call, and I appreciate everything that we all do to go put into that, but it's about getting the full vision of how Agile affects your business. And that could be from the people who've been doing it like most of us that are on the regulars. We've been doing this for about 10 years or so, but your perspective as being new to Agile is incredibly important to us. Let's have fun and amplify the learning that we have within our community. I want to talk about Black Swan events. And Black Swan events, as you know, we're going through one right now with the current pandemic. In general, if you've never heard of this metaphor before, it refers to an event that considered to be impossible or incredibly rare, or we didn't think it was going to happen. And the way that the metaphor came into existence was people said that there's no such thing as a black swan. And then lo and behold, I believe it was either in New Zealand or down somewhere in that region, somebody found a black swan and everyone was surprised. This is really how the metaphor kind of relates into the bigger picture of business and the bigger picture of what we do in a normal day is that we have these events that when they take us by surprise, we typically think, in case of Black Swan, we didn't think it was possible. Also, if you were to go look at the data that was behind it, typically every single data point showed us that the event was possible, but we somehow didn't even see it, or we were cognitively blind from that. The last part is, if you look at from the impact, it is something that is very transformational. And that transformation capability is very powerful, especially as a change agent within an organization. One of the other points just is that we can always rationalize these things in hindsight, meaning that, oh yeah, we've sort of seen the data out there. We should have known that, and we can kind of look through it. Once Black Swan events occur, typically they become normalized within the system for a few years. And so if you look at, the socio-technical landscape that goes around most of status quo today, our values, our environment, our vision, our resources, and our policies all kind of entangled together to the point where some new thing can't get in. And that means that, say, a new product feature, or a new product idea, or something that's out there, it just is impervious to getting through the skin of the system. And this is where we get, I think, in most cases, we become most fragile to a Black Swan event, because that when they occur, they cause serious amounts of structural stress. Values, our environments, our vision, our resources, and our policies, unfortunately, don't survive very well through that, and big disruption occurs. Everything starts to have to go be revisited or relooked at, or looking at it from a different perspective. And that first initial bomb of when it occurs is when people are shell-shocked, when people are having their hardest time through that. And then slowly through this, new opportunities will seek in and will do the mindset of the organization. And then transformation can occur. Blind spots, as they happen within our organizations, have always been fascinating to me. If you look at like examples like Blockbuster versus, say, Netflix, you could see early bifurcations of their business model were not taking place. They were riding high on their profits from rewind fees. And I know that some of you might not know that we used to rewind something called video tape. They were making a lot of money from that. And DVDs come in, no more rewind fees, no more late fees if you suddenly you have another competitor out there saying that you can keep it as long as you want. There was a whole bunch of different signs that were in their organizational blindness that eventually led to the fact that today there is only one Blockbuster video store in the United States. And it's a sad kind of story from what was an early success to an eventual downfall as an organization. So what I'd like to talk about, and hopefully we'll get some people chiming in on this, is that how do you as a coach lead during a Black Swan event? And I know, Shauna, you're on the call and you talked about this in your great webinar that you did last week. And so if you could share some of those insights, that would be good. But also within that scope is how do you get your teams ready for such events when they occur? Because I do believe that there is some prep that's done. U.S. military does a lot of work around VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity training that they do in order to say that, yeah, all plans are good, but as soon as it meets contact with the customers, or in the case of wartime with the enemy, most of those plans go out the window. And last one, does Agile help or hinder all of this? Kick us off. I noticed, Shauna, you put on your microphone. Did you want to give an opinion on all of this, or do you have some ways of approaching this?
Sure. You know, I think Black Swan events can happen not just right now. We're facing something that's across the entire ecosystem of every part of the landscape that we're living, we're breathing. It can also happen as small as within an organization where they want to innovate and change direction. And to your point of all of the things that are preventing them from doing that, that's when you may see things like skunkworks projects appear, or, private, a lot of times companies will have some kind of hidden or secret name. And that way they can kind of innovate, figure out if it's going to be something that works. While the team gets to kind of get really excited around something, the challenge is that the rest of the organization is oftentimes left out. So in my mind, it's not necessarily Agile specifically that's helping or hindering, but I think it's really all about the narrative. It's about the narrative and how we're creating the story to the team working on ideating on the event or the project that's surrounding the Black Swan event. I think it's narrating to the rest of the organization why it's important. And so really understanding the landscape, having great, even if metrics don't exist, understanding how other companies or why this is even happening is really important to get the team to understand. And then you can start using some of your Agile methods to start breaking it down and understanding what the team needs to do to solve the problem. I think that the biggest thing is to understand the why and really building all of the narrative around that problem statement for both the organization as well as the team.
I like that. I think that's interesting is when you talked about skunkworks, we used to have a lab that managers couldn't go into. They actually had to be invited to come into that lab, and that was because they were working on different innovations. And for whatever reason, I was a director at a company for several decades. I can tell you that my simple just comment on something had a profound influence on the teams, where I didn't think it would have a profound influence on the teams. Hendrik, what do you think?
Put here basically two questions up. One thing is how to get ready for VUCA, and how do you, when it happens, how do you coach and lead a team through this? And I think getting ready for it is basically, and I think their agility really helps a lot, because Agile is so much about continuous learning, being ready to be surprised and embrace when new insights come in. So I think this continuous focus on looking at what's happening, what's really working well, what's not so working so well, and so on, retrospectives, that is a great preparation for the VUCA world, I think. But then, like Shona was saying, how do you prepare a whole company for this? I think some companies are good at this by having skunk work and having some things hidden in the background. Some people have a bit like the long-range radar, or people who have a bit like this sense for the weak signals, as we call them. And it's important in a company that you leave these people a bit alone, that you let them do. And because the mainstream product development, for example, in a company cannot embrace these weak signals, because they are just executing, they are more focusing maybe on lean implementation and working efficiently. So that's for me how do you get ready? Yeah. But then also, how do you, once it happens, how do you lead a team? And I think then, of course, it's a bit like, I mean, everybody likes birthday presents, the positive surprises, and here comes a negative surprise. So there will be maybe some frustration. And I think as a coach, it's very important that you show a lot of empathy, that you sit with the team, that you, first of all, embrace what just happened. And say, okay, now we are all feeling miserable about this. And okay, so once we get rid of the frustration and the negative feelings, what can we do? How can we build on these things? So trying to move towards a positive spirit in the sense of how can we leverage on this now, and how can we move forward instead of looking back?
It's interesting that you bring up mourning, to be able to understand that this stuff has changed, and to be able to acknowledge that. I think a lot of change agents don't acknowledge the change. Would you agree with that?
There are change agents who too quickly, in my opinion, move on and don't take the people from where they are. Yeah? So like, but look here, this is what we have to do now. And I think it's very important that you spend some time and focus on the mourning, as you say, saying, okay, now there's an element of not positive feelings, and they have their space, and it's perfectly okay to feel like you feel. And then, of course, we want to move on, because this company wants to survive, and let's become constructive.
Right. We have a special guest. Deanna, what do you think about this?
So a couple of things come to mind in terms of how do you get teams ready. I think there's some great examples out there. Like if you read about the Netflix and their Chaos Monkey, they have engineered into their overall system outages, random outages, so that it becomes routine to deal with the unexpected. And I think, that it becomes just a part of how we work together. We expect the unexpected is going to hit at any time. And so we've already got some systems and processes and things in place to handle those. And so I think examples like that are really helpful. If you want to get ready, if you know these things are coming, which in today's world, we now know these things are coming. We don't know what they are, but we know that they will be. And so it makes sense to prepare for that eventuality. And then in addition to that, in terms of the coaching and leading, one of the things in my career, and you said early in the introduction that people had been doing this work for 10 years. Well, I've been doing this work for more than 30 years. I almost hate to admit. And in my experience, one of the things that happens in this kind of sudden change events, sudden change of direction, is people, when there is so much uncertainty and so much unknown, people our brains get busy at trying to make sense of it, and very often what we do is fill in with our greatest concerns, our worst fears, and then we make plans based on those things. And so I think it's really important for coaches and leaders to have the kind of frank conversations Hendrik was talking about, and include in that, here's what we know so far. I'm being transparent with you. These are the pieces we know. And we've been watching our governments do that in response to the pandemic. Some governments have been much better about doing that than others in terms of sharing what we know so far. And here are the things we don't know yet. It's not that we're holding this back or not sharing it. It's we haven't figured this part out. And there is relief in that. There is relief in knowing that we're not being blocked from certain information that's out there, but we don't have it yet. That kind of transparency that we talk about a lot in Agile becomes even more critical when we're in this kind of an environment where things are changing rapidly. We are building building the plane as we fly it, right? That sort of metaphor. We need to know what we know and what we don't know, and try to prepare ourselves as well as possible for the things we don't know that we don't know.
Right. And I really like the situation. My family was from the military, and my dad would always tell me stories about how they would create readiness within the troops. And some of that was the sort of the monkey testing thing. Let's go create one event and then suddenly pull the fire drill, do both at the same time. So you got to hit your station, but yet you also have to go put out a fire at the same time. And that critical thinking got people prepared for that. So I do agree. Jorg, a happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everybody. Good thoughts. And just to add a bit, one thing really, how to prepare is a bit be mindful. So if you see something that looks like a very small black or even like a gray swan, don't ignore it. There are a lot of small things that you can just brush over, rush past, and don't even look back. It looks a bit strange, but we're going to succeed anyway. If you see such things, spend some time on them. Practice asking the right questions. Whether or not the learning from it is really big, really small, you don't know until you try. So if you always have that target focus and say, that's exactly the only thing I care for, and all the other things that seem a bit strange, bit off ways, you ignore all these just to make the exact schedule or the minimum scope. You run the risk of not being prepared for a surprise that grows, because you just don't have the practice of looking at it honestly. Because one important thing is, as well as a coach, always acknowledge that you don't know something. I think Diana already said it, but I think that's really, really important. As we see from the governments, there is nobody who knows everything, at least not before hindsight. And that's something, in the crisis, people will look to somebody to take the leadership and set a direction, whether it's right or wrong. Waiting is probably not the best thing there. That will just grow scares and uncertainty. So something will happen anyway. If you assume you're always right and suddenly you feel you are not, that's a bad feeling. If you always know you can fail and you're uncertain at another point, so what does it matter? It's not that much different. It's maybe a bit harder, but the general direction is still the same. So try to be open is my main advice on both things, actually.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point where our engineering brain wants to analyze everything, but if we don't have enough data to analyze, we can't really move forward. So making a decision and then getting data based upon those decisions become very critical. Raven, are you there?
Hi, everyone. I have some interesting, thoughts about it. So yes, I believe that this is about change management. I believe that a lot of organizations tend to only exercise change when there is an actual problem. And I think that maybe change management needs to be a part of routine work, just like you have an Agile board, or, you're exercising Scrum, you see your board there. Maybe there should be some type of change management canvas to assess where we are and looking at small different changes. So I'm a fan of change and experimentation. So as far as VUCA is concerned, I would want to look at where are we and what worked. Because at some point in time, before we entered and had that Black Swan, we had a plan that says, okay, we believe it worked, and here is why we believe worked. And then we need to analyze why are the reasons why it potentially has failed, and where do we want to go. So it's just a matter to me in identifying options for change and doing small experimentations around those things. I don't think that when we get to a big bang problem that we can just solve everything at once. So look at our options, figure out which ones are cost and bring about impact, and then work on those things and experiment with those things over time. I am curious about, so you know how we do mob programming, and for everyone's in the room, somebody is doing some type of development. Mobbing is not just programming. It could be for different things outside of programming. You notice when we have a big problem, how people just want to swarm everyone in the room and figure out a problem. I wonder what would it look like for us to just work in a mobbing fashion, so that maybe if we worked in a mobbing fashion, we wouldn't have to go through a lot of these VUCA situations. I'm just my thought.
Yeah, no, I like that idea quite a bit. If anyone has never mobbed, please go do it. It's actually easy. You don't have to be a programmer to mob. You can be one of the navigators within the system, and you can give input. And I think it's important in that model is yes, you have people who are solving the problem, but you also have experts and other people feeding in more maybe a naive experiment that can be done to go solve the issue in a different way, which is really good. Hector.
Really appreciate it. Just real quick, coming from an organization where we actually mobilized about 300,000 employees into Agile, it took time to do that, but we actually, obviously, we showed the benefits of Agile and then get people to buy into the benefits. So a lot of education, a lot of value demonstration, and showing some references that actually showed that the Agile methodology worked. But going back to the conversation, I like the conversation because I believe that we have 80% of what we need to solve most of these issues we have. It's that 20% that gets us into trouble, that we need tools to be able to solve these problems that we're not aware of. So I like the formula that goes E plus R equals O, and E is the event that you don't know it's going to happen. R is how you're going to respond to the event, and O is what is the outcome you're looking for. So if the response is out of whack to the event that you actually can't predict, then you have to work on what Agile is all about and what the 7th edition of the PMBOK is talking about. How do you prepare yourself? What are the principles in your culture, which is a lot of the manifesto that Agile brings to the table? What are the value systems, and what is the trust level that you have within your organization and culture? You know, you kind of do a scoring model on those in your organization or departments, and you start to evaluate your response. A response can't be conditional. If you have a conditional response to an event that you didn't expect, you're going to be in trouble. So I look at it more like I've lived in my house 20 years. I know where the fire extinguisher is, but I've never used it in 20 years. But I know where it is, but I got to test that every so often. So that's the model that I kind of think about, and that's the theory that I think about. And when I talk to my employees, I sort of create a story, not to pun the Agile method, but to create a story, and then we play a lot of what would happen and what can we do about it before it happens. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation. Thank you.
That's pretty good. I think the notion of assessments as well kind of fits into that picture, which is, you know, what I found interesting about most new assessments that we were doing within our organization is that when they were new, they showed us something we didn't know.
Correct.
If you continue to do them, after time you get a little blind to them. But I always found that there was new information that could roll in and say, hey, maybe we should address that. But thank you for that comment. Jonathan, I noticed your mic went on for a second. Are you there?
Yes, I was just allowing everybody else to go. But I wanted to kind of agree both with Raven and the previous speakers. It's a combination of um, getting people to go through that experience, getting people to do those drills. It's great to say that we have things in place. We have disaster recovery areas in place. But have you had a fire drill? Have you had a chance to see, well, what would happen if we had to turn a disaster recovery area on? Like, does everybody know those procedures? And I think that knowledge, that experience and preparation is missing. And going back to what Raven was saying about the mob programming or working together, it definitely has to be something that people have to get the knowledge. Because a lot of in the developer world, you still have developers who do not care for it because they like being able to work and think on their own. They don't work well with other people in the kitchen.
That's a difficult situation to deal with, especially with most agile team events. Or it's a team sport. Let's see, Lakshmi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. So I echo everyone's thoughts so far, and this actually really ties well into the webinar that Shauna conducted just a week or so ago when you're pitching an idea to the team to create that shared understanding. The same thing applies here because it's so important for leadership to meet people where they're at and really create that shared understanding of what the problem is and be genuine about it. And one of the quotes that always come to mind with communication problems is the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, right? So because leadership has been thinking about it for a long time, they forget to paint that picture and give the company, the organization, or the teams the context that they need. So that's just what I wanted to share.
Thank you for that. Let's see, Joe, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Hi, Ren.
Hi.
I have been on and off these calls, and it's really nourishing to hear the experience. So I'm tapping into your flattery gets you everywhere.
Oh, there you go.
A bit there. But one of the things I've been thinking about the space we are in right now, the whole VUCA happening around us, is ways to get out of the react to redesign. I'm choosing those words very intentionally in the way that we approach not just our teams, but from a leadership standpoint, from where the organizations need to head, helping leaderships redefine their own leadership style, redefine the culture, redefine the products and services that we are going to define, redefine, redesign. I'm interchanging those. And I think as coaches, and I'm personally speaking for myself as well, is I want to redesign who I am for that world that's going to come next. So a lot of regenerative, a lot of innovation happening within me. Mm-hmm. So I can offer up that innovation, that space for social innovation to happen. It's not just me, but we as a collective and also the world that we are going to step in. I know I've used a lot of buzzwords here, but from a practical standpoint, what's that vision again? Let's get that straight. Is that a sustainable vision, what we have already on the paper? Or is it time to redesign that? And then the purpose, and then follow through with the product services.
Right.
That's where I am currently out of work. So I get to think about all of these things, but I'm helping other coaches and Scrum Masters also to step into that space.
By the way, if you're looking for a job, if you go up to the ACN agilecoachingnetwork.org, join the Slack channel and just go ahead and put into I'm looking for work. There's a vibrant community that's starting to build there, and we're all kind of networking and helping people at this point. So be sure to go do that. Redesigning yourself, Raven, actually, she put into the question box a second ago. I love that. Yes, I think the personal agility, and you getting yourself prepared for these events are something that are vital and important. And I can tell you, though, that personal change takes a long time, because I know for myself, I was very much an achiever leader slant for most of my career. And then I suddenly had to go into servant leadership and to also being more of a synergistic leadership model. And that took me a long time to do. And occasionally I slip back into the achiever leader slant when necessary, but I tend to try to be more synergistic. But that personal change, as you know, takes time. So
I know. I completely empathize with that. But I think, I don't know, this is, again, not having work to do and all this time to think about how do we redesign our future? Not just from a leadership perspective, not from a capitalistic standpoint. We have to talk about the benefit of the humankind. And that's where the storm inside me is coming from. Mm-hmm. So, and if anybody wants to geek out on it, I am ready to have these conversations.
Well, just like I said, join that Slack channel, which I saw about 5 or 10 messages come by of people who joined. Post that there, and I know you'll get some people who want to geek out with you on that. Nguyen, last comment on this one.
Win?
Yeah, Win. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Yeah. That's okay. Thank you, Ray. First of all, this is my first one, and I'm so excited. I'm very passionate about Agile. I look at Agile as just not a way of managing projects or even a way of working, but for me, it's a way of living, right? We're being adaptable to change. And I'm going to piggyback on what's been said before and answering that question for me. How do you lead during a Black Swan event? Excuse me. I look at it as going back to the Agile values, and in particular, in the individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And here, from my perspective, the customer or the employees, it's everybody, right, in that company. For example, for this particular situation that we are in with the pandemic, for example, I believe an Agile way of leading your workforce and your human resources and your people during this is in the messaging. So instead of, is your company putting out the message of, hey, how can you continue to be productive during this time? Are they putting out that message versus how can we help you, mental health, or how can we help you with resources to get through this difficult time? There's, I believe that there is a kind of read between the lines, and unfortunately, I don't believe that the message of how do you maintain productivity during this time gives off, I don't believe that really supports the Agile value of individuals and interactions over processes and tools, or customer collaboration over contract negotiation. What that seems to read to me is we want to make sure that you, our workforce, are still working now that you're working from home, because we want to make sure that you're not just staying idle because we can't watch you because you're not reporting to the office anymore. So and I have to do a check of my own biases and sensitivities. And I think, there's got to be something. I can't be the only one, and I can't be the crazy one who reads that if that's the first message that a company puts out is, hey, we're going to try to keep you in the office as long as we can until we're kind of forced to, allow employees to work from home. And then once you start working from home, all the tips and stuff are, how do you remain productive? To me, that kind of message sends off lack of trust, right? And measurement of what productivity is, rather than helping the people, valuing the individuals and interactions over processes and tools. That's my 2 cents. And I love what you said, Ray, that during these sessions, everyone is an expert. I really appreciate that.
No problem. And to your point on the messaging and how we as leaders, I don't mean to use the word spin, because I do think it comes from a little bit of our own belief system. I consider that every day is a new normal. that the day's going to face me, and we're always going to have a set of challenges. Some of those are going to be little, some of them are going to be monumental. And I think the approach of, yes, we do need to understand that we've had a full disruption, but when we talk about normal, we're talking about nostalgia. And are we ever going to get back to that perfect moment again? Reality is no, we're not going to.
Right.
And,
Yep.
and we as leaders, I think, have to take people through the journey of, so that business goal is now not there. And pointing back to what Shauna did in her webinar when she showed the ugly plate of takeout food of, is this the best we can do? If you're trying to save your restaurant, putting everything in a little styrofoam box and saying, here, it isn't that yummy, versus presentation, versus unboxing, versus, the whole notion of let's make the best of this, I think is always important. And I appreciate your comments on this. So
thank you.
No problem. So we have a couple of top questions that are up here, and I was going to go switch to those really quick. And the one in particular we can talk about within the period of time that we have is, we're starting an Agile transformation, and what's the important ways that we can measure the team and the organization maturing? And I know we've had a number of maturing questions before, but what is in particular ways that we can go approach that? And Diana, are you there? Do you want to give a response to this? Or Linda?
Well, I am here. This is Diana. And Linda, do you want to talk first? You haven't had a chance yet?
No, okay. Go right ahead.
All right. So my point of view on maturity is really different than a lot of other people. The capability, the capacity to reach outcomes is a much more important measure to focus on than maturity. I mean, maturity, I'm an older adult now. I'm considered to be, fully, maybe even beyond mature. And I just did that by staying alive. I didn't contribute anything to doing that. I didn't, maybe I, had to have some skills in staying healthy to stay alive this long. But beyond that, maturity for me is not the place I want to put my focus. Where I want to put my focus is, is the team able to do the things that we want it to do? And that may mean that the organization needs to make some investments in the teams to help them, to enable them. And so I'm maybe not the right person to talk about being a fan of maturity models right now. So Linda, maybe you should take over from there.
Yeah, go for it, Linda.
Well, thank you very much, Diana. And for those of you who don't know, Diana and I are much closer generationally than we may be to a lot of the folks in this audience, I suspect. And I would say that it concerns me sometimes that we worry about measuring our Agile maturity as if Agile was the goal. Because for me, Agile itself is not the goal. That Agile and these practices and values we have help us achieve whatever our other goals are around, building new products, adding new value to customers, that those things are the things we should be striving for and measuring. And I also, when I think about maturity, when teams think they're mature, and I've seen this happen, one of the negative effects of anointing a team as being, well, you've reached this maturity level, is that they may lose their interest in growing. And so that's a concern I have around considering maturity to be an important thing. I'd almost rather teams were able to keep a beginner's mindset where they were willing to experiment and learn and fail and get up and try again and just keep going towards whatever other true goals that they have in their workplace.
Let's see, we've got a couple people that got their hands up. Let's see. Annie, are you there?
So I'm one of those folks who have gray hairs, and I've stopped counting or pulling them out. Once upon a time, a number of years back, there was a company called Electronic Data Systems, EDS. One of the cool things about their culture, this was under Ross Perot days, for those of you who have any kind of history of systems information. There was a culture in there that basically said, you're going to move every 2 years if you know what you're doing and if you're good at it. And the reason they moved people around every 2 years was two things. One, they wanted to make sure that they didn't develop any kingdoms or queendoms. And the second thing was that you were forced to be humble. You were always going to be evolving into a rookie. So it helped open minds to different ways of operating, different cultures, different business units, et cetera, et cetera. And I think in a lot of ways, we have forgotten that kind of mantra. When I've gone into different companies as a consultant coach, I look to see how long people have been in their current positions. Are they rotating? Are you looking at different events? Are you looking at different opportunities? And if folks haven't been, then as part of I don't know if you want to call it a maturity matrix, but I'm kind of doing a mental assessment. I hate to use that word, but that's probably what it is. I'm looking at them and thinking, how open are you to ambiguity and new questions? And that's my kind of measure to see how people are moving with Agile. How stuck in their ways are they? And how are they able to do a pivot or an inspect and adapt or something new? And when they're even in a base team, you have conversations going, you know? How open are they to being able to say, yeah, I can live with that?
And you bring up some interesting points there. I mean, one of the things that, research and looking at DARPA doesn't keep any teams intact beyond 2 years. And they consider that, innovation can only, if the bureaucracy gets too big above an organization, then innovation can't occur. So they make people reapply to their jobs every 2 years. The other one and I can tell you from my experience of being 30 years inside of Intel Corporation, as a senior leader, I was required to have to rotate. There was a period of time under certain leadership that said that, very similar to the EDS model, that I had to go rotate into a different position. And what had to be out of my field, meaning that if I'm in R&D, I would have to go do a rotation over in manufacturing, so I can learn that, so I can understand the full, complete business that we were in as a company. And I think you're right. I think we don't give enough to that. Let's see. Carolyn, are you there?
Yes. Hi. I'm newer to Agile, and I work for a manufacturing organization, but manage a software application within the realms. And we have a small Scrum team of 4 people. And typically how I have, as I'm kind of adapting into managing with Agile methodology, the way that I've tried to measure maturity, and I'm kind of the same mindset of Diana and Linda. It's really more about the outcomes than it is, are we good at this methodology? And some of the ways that I've been kind of trying to keep track of, are we getting it better at doing this, and is it helping us be more effective? I try to monitor the level of engagement amongst the Scrum team itself, but in addition to that, how the Scrum team is engaged with the stakeholders and customers, and to try to pay attention to, are we, when we're working together, level of engagement to me is there open dialogue? Is it productive dialogue? And I like what Annie was saying too, is there a willingness to learn from each other, but also together. And that's kind of how, as I'm starting to explore Agile and be part of it, how do I make sure working with the team to use it and be productive with it as well.
Those are awesome ideas. Thank you very much. Sheila, are you there?
Yeah, the thing I think about is I get a little concerned about too much emphasis on measuring. And I agree with the person who said that when you declare a team mature, that there's a tendency to sort of rest on your laurels. Ossification can set in my opinion. So then they're no longer agile. But also when you have an emphasis on measuring, I think that's the wrong emphasis altogether. I mean, if you try to formalize it, come up with a formula that you can use repeatedly to measure, then that's process again, that you're putting a process in place that you're going to rely on. But maybe it's because I've usually worked on things that were at the time considered cutting edge. And I thought it's kind of funny how many people have said that they're of a generation, because it sounds like a lot of people on this call are. But we all have something in our personalities or our mindset that we are open to new ideas. And I think that might be one of the things that's hard to measure. I remember when I was still quite young, I worked in a company where they said they had tried to figure out what made for a good analyst. And they found that the only common denominator was more or less an inquiring mind and broad interests. That one person in their spare time worked on refurbishing antique cars. Another person was a chess master. And they went down the list, but there were no two that were alike in what their educational background was or what their outside interests were. It was more just that mindset. And I think that's maybe what's drawn all of us to doing this kind of thing.
And, to pull from what Dan Pink did in his book, talking about autonomy, mastery, and purpose, I think that whole thing about mastery, what people choose to master when they get their heart into it becomes key to them. And they want to just live, breathe, eat, sleep. That's what they do. And those are the types of people that I can tell you as a coach and as a manager, those are the people that you want to have around because they're very important. We are approaching the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone. If you guys want to have an opportunity to see, more conversations with me, well, there's a couple of different options that are there, or any of the regulars that we have on this call. You could go up to that Slack channel, and that's how we communicate for the rest of the month. And you can post questions there. I'm active there, so I will get to any questions there. You can email me. You can also come to XP 2020 online. I'm not sure exactly how we interact as a group on that online forum, but I will also be there as well. So please tune into that. And I hope that you guys have a great month, and I hope to see you soon. This podcast is provided by Agile Alliance for educational and informative purposes only. To find out more information about the member-supported Agile Alliance, please go to agilealliance.org to find out about more upcoming events, as well as different programs that are available to help you with your Agile journey.